Now, what I want to do in this example, I'm going to modify it somewhat. So please, here's the qualifier. I am modifying example or exercise 5.10. I am modifying exercise 5.10 just to highlight how the allowance method is calculated. I am modifying exercise 5.10 just so that I can highlight to you how the allowance method is used for uncollectible accounts. All right, so listen carefully. In this example and exercise, it says custom design uses the allowance method to estimate and record bad debt expense. The accounts receivable has a balance of this, and the allowance for doubtful accounts has a credit balance of this. So here's how I modify it. Let's say based on the aging, the required ending balance in the allowance account is $6,200. And I've kind of demonstrated that here. All right. This $6,200 is based on the aging, which I've shown you how to do in the previous slide. So we had a $90,000 accounts receivable. Our allowance account based on aging is $6,200. And we had a $1,200 write-off in this example, a $1,200 write-off from one customer, which was deemed to be uncollectible, so we wrote them off. How do we journalize that? We debited the allowance for $1,200 and we credited accounts receivable for $1,200. We wrote them off, all right? So now we show this write-off of $1,200. We started out, in my hypothetical example, I put a beginning balance in the allowance of $3,000, which came from the aging of the prior period. So we started out with a $3,000 beginning balance, which came from the aging of the prior period. We then wrote off $1,200, which puts us in a position now, which puts us into a position now where we have an $1,800 credit balance in the aging account after the write-off. All right, we have an $1,800 credit balance in the aging account after the write-off. So that being said, now what we have to do is we have to look at that $6,200 balance, and we have to get now from an $1,800 credit balance to a $6,200 credit balance, which now gives us an adjusting amount of $4,400. So under the aging method, now we would have a adjustment to get us to $6,200 of $4,400. The journal entry to record that would be a debit to bad debt expense of $4,400 and a credit to the allowance for doubtful accounts for $4,400. I essentially had a beginning balance of $3,000. We had a write-off of $1,200, which brought us to a subtotal balance of $1,800. On the credit side, I now need to get to a credit of $6,200. All right? Let's say in this example, and I'll take it one step further, and then we'll move to the direct write-off method. Let's say in this example, same beginning balance of $3,000. Let's say my write-off now is $4,200 instead of $1,200. My write-off now is $4,200 instead of the $1,200. That now gives me a subtotal balance in the allowance account of what? $1,200. The difference between the two, I have a debit balance now of $1,200. And now I'm trying to get to a $6,200 credit balance. What is the adjusting amount I'm going to need to go from this $1,200 debit balance to a $6,200 credit balance? I'll give you a second. The adjusting amount is going to be $7,400. I'm going to need to credit the allowance account for $7,400. So now my adjusting entry is going to be a debit to bad debt expense for $7,400 and a credit to the allowance for bad debt of $7,400. So you can see how it works either both ways. You start out with the beginning balance of the allowance. You post and journalize the write-off. You come up with a subtotal balance, and then it requires an adjusting amount to get to that required ending balance. That is how the allowance account works. Go through this video again, review the video again in both methods that I applied under the allowance method in both examples, and then you too will become an expert in doing the allowance method for uncollectible accounts. More to come.